Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for coming over to Out on a Limb with Gabby Allen. Today, I have the great pleasure of having Liz Crowe on. I think that we are going to have a blast. I'm sure we're going to talk books, process, all the things. Make sure you check out the website. I was just over there. Beautiful, beautiful covers. I love it. I love the subjects that are being talked about through the books. And so let's dig in and see what we've got. So I'm just going to ask the one question that I only ever ask, and that is, Liz, what is it that you do and how do you do it?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.
I always tell people podcasts are my favorite format because I can talk about myself for hours.
Yes. As you do. As you do.
Right. And I have no problem with it whatsoever. So what I do when I'm not raising money for shelter pets, because I'm a development director for a humane society.
I love that.
Is I write books, and I write romance books across the board by mostly contemporary romance. Many of them, I would say 85% of them that are steamy, erotic.
Oh, okay. So steamy or erotic? Because to me, those are two different things.
I feel like that those two words are getting kind of used in a similar way lately.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but mine are erotic. They are explicit. I don't close the door when the sex starts on most of my books, about 85%. Okay. Yeah. And so one of the things that is challenging is to keep that fresh.
Right? Because there's really only so many ways you can do it.
It really is.
Yes.
It really, really is. So what I do is I take a break from it sometimes, and I'll write something where I try to make the sensuality and the steaminess less about the actual act of sex and more about either the tension or banter, the dialogue, the buildup, or the situation. Okay. So I challenge myself with that. And so it's funnily enough, I did that with the book I have coming out, the one that's coming out next. It's called What Happens in Denver. And it is, I'm calling it, it's a little more of a rom-com or chick lit style book because it is first person point of view, which I don't do very often. So it's first person point of view and the female perspective, and it's completely 100% her perspective. I never switch to the male perspective. Right. And that is something I do a lot in my books, and I actually kind of like writing in a guy's head every now and then. That's kind of fun to me. But I did not do that for this, and it was my sort of experiment with trying that way of writing. And I had a lot of fun with it. It gives you a lot of leeway that I wasn't really used to because I don't usually write in first person. Yes. So I went with it. And it was, it was super fun. And I kept it's chick lit in that if you hold to the rules, if you will, about that, it's about a female story, 100%. And it's more about her growth, her arc, what's happening in her life. And this particular character goes from kind of rock bottom to something new that she never expected. And a lot of it is because of a new friend she makes. Good. But also there's a romance there with someone else, and it's kind of a side story.
It's interesting. So I don't know how long you've been writing, but I've been writing since 2000. So I came into the game when chick lit was big. And that is what I started out writing. And so I probably have maybe 14, 15 books that are dual point of view, third person, past. Most of mine are first person. And one of the reasons, and I also write cozy mysteries, which sometimes tend to be first person. I love first person. I think that you can really, I often feel like again, like we're sitting at a table and I'm like, oh my gosh, you have to, let me tell you what happened last week. So I walked down the street and I did, and so it's more conversational to me, I think. And the only limitation though that I sometimes bite my nails over is that the only thing that you can tell the reader is something that the point of view character knows, which can both work in your favor and be really frustrating because you're like, how the hell am I going to get her to know that? So did you have any problems switching? Some people have issues with going from third to first.
I did not. I've written one other book in first person, and it's a romance. It's a It isn't romance, but it's a lot more. It's kind of a dark story about a woman's growth who's gone through a lot of darker things than this one story is about. So I did it once before, and I did it. That story kind of grew organically out of me, and I just felt like it needed to be first person. This story has a bit of a different backstory. I wrote it as a traditional back and forth, third person, you know, the usual kind of what people expect from a romance, you know, his, hers, his, hers, his, hers, you know. And I had an agent for a hot second, and she had me rewrite it. She gave me some reading assignments, and I read almost every genre, so I'd heard of a lot of these authors she told me to read, and I had a great time, and I found a couple of new favorites for myself.
Wonderful.
And so she goes, I want you to take this book and turn it more into that.
Oh.
So I'm like, okay, so that was a massive rewrite.
Yeah, was that
massive. I mean, half the book is gone because half the book was in his perspective.
Okay.
And it really, what it did, ultimately we parted ways. So whatever.
It happened.
But I will say I learned a lot, and that exercise did a lot for me as a writer. I mean, it forced me to do something completely different, and it was fun. And then when I sold it myself to a publisher later.
Okay.
Yeah. And so as part of the agent experience, I had 2 books. I had a duet, I guess, in duology, or whatever you call them.
Yeah.
I had 2 couples that were intertwined, kind of brothers, and then the 2 women. And so I had this second book. And so I told the publisher, well, I got this second book if you want it as well. And it does clear up a lot of backstory about the other couple, the woman who the main female character and what happens in Denver befriends. They become very close. Okay. And then, so you kind of want to know more about what's going on with her and the other brother. Right. And so I told that story but what I did was, because I had kind of enjoyed writing that first person, I did this in first person. Okay. But I went back to dual. So I have her perspective and her first person, and then I have his perspective in first person.
I have read books like that. I think the only thing for me is that the 2 point of views, I should be able to tell who's talking without having to be signaled at the top.
Well, I signal it because
absolutely I would. I prefer the ones that I can be signaled. That's fine, but I like the characters to think differently enough or to speak differently enough in their heads that I don't, if I'm 5 pages in, I don't have to go back and say, okay, who was this?
You won't have to do that for this, I don't think, but so I kept it that. And it is back to, I felt like, I guess I had enough of a break from writing the sexy stuff. And so, man, this one goes right at it.
So are you comfortable writing sex in first person? Because there are a lot of people who are not.
Oh, 100%. I have no trouble.
Okay. No. Interesting.
And from his perspective. So just as many of the scenes are in his head.
That's awesome.
So I read it across the board. You know, I started on the erotic side though, and have moved away from it a little bit to try other things. Right. You know, and my latest thing now is I'm working on my first actual not at all a romance. I'm working on a thriller, kind of a domestic thriller, I guess. It's not romantic suspense. It didn't really. I wrote a whole novel, and I'm working with a manuscript developer, a guy who I met, who I really respect, and I'm very excited to be working with, except for the fact that he read the whole thing and he's like, yeah, this is fine if you want romantic suspense, and that's not what I'm helping you with. So here's an outline, and I need you to start outlining. I'm like, oh no, I don't know. He's like, oh yes. Oh yes, you will. So we went back to square one, and I read books, I watched TV shows and movies that he recommended, and I read across the board. I'm like, I read thrillers. I need you to read this book, you know, or watch that show, and none of them I'd heard of, right? So that was cool. And I finished my outline, and I have now written chapter 1. Okay. And the last chapter. He let me write chapter 1, and then he said, I want you to write the last chapter because you've gone through this whole outline process so that you know, because you can't pants your way through a thriller. Okay. Which is fair. Right. because he said you did that and you wrote basically a romantic suspense novel, which I'm not helping you with that.
Okay. So he's very specific.
Very.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's like, no, you can do this, and you're gonna do this.
Okay.
You know? And so I'm like, all right. It's been a little painful, but again, learning, always learning.
Always.
Right. You know, so that's what I'm considering. So I've written chapter 1, and I've written the last chapter a couple times and stopped, you know, theoretically thrown it away. So now now I know what it needs to be. So I'm gonna do that.
So are you going to sell this? Like, have you been publishing with the Wild Rose Press for everything else, and you have hopes of getting this out into a different publishing house?
I have 3 different publishers.
Okay.
One of them. But they're all romance publishers, and this is not that at all. And so he won't let me talk about that part yet.
Oh, that's fine.
He's like, no, we're going to write the book.
Okay.
And then we're going to talk about how we're going to market it. And it may be that I can get someone to read it for you. And it may be that you publish it yourself.
Oh, all right.
And I'm down with that, because I've got a whole bunch of stuff I'm going to publish myself next year anyway. So.
Oh, very nice. Have you done that before, or is that a new thing for you?
Not new.
Okay.
No, not new. I have a whole series. I have a whole series that I self-published.
Very cool.
Yeah,
very cool.
I run the gamut, really. You know, I've had an agent for a minute. You know, I did all these things. You know, and I just am like, all right, I want to try this.
Right.
And I'm at the stage now where I'm empty nesting, so I don't have to. I did a lot of my writing when I was not empty nesting. That was hard.
Yeah.
And now I'm much more flexible, you know, to do stuff. So, which helps.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, do you find that your readers jump through the different genres with you because you have a core story that they love?
Everything I've published up to this point has been romance, in some form or another. Yeah.
Right, but with contemporary romance and the rom-com, and like as you're shifting within
my core audience, my hardcore fans will read anything I hand them. Yeah.
Nice.
So what I'm trying to do is find a few more, you know, as we do, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So this, I'm just trying different things. But also I have, in the last few years, a lot of things. I mean, of course, the world is happening right now, but also in the last 5 years, a lot of things have happened to me personally that have caused me to do a lot of thinking about why I'm trying so hard.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I think it's a great conversation to have with yourself or friends.
It is crucial, because you're going to drive yourself completely insane with jealousy and frustration and everything else that are not conducive to your creativity or your good mental health.
Okay.
Regardless of being creative.
Right.
If you continuously think that you're not successful if you're not up there in the ether with all the super successful people, because so much of that is luck.
Mm-hmm.
And what my theory now is, I'm going to continue to try to be and that's why I'm subjecting myself to this guy's thing, you know, I'm doing this thing that because I want to, but I also want to get better as a writer.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I want to get better as a writer, and then I will keep writing. I'm one of those writers that has the opposite problem from writer's block. I have projects, you know, left, right, and center.
Yes.
So, you know, I'm just going to keep at them, and I'm going to keep learning, and I'm going to keep getting better.
Good.
And then something hits, and I get lucky. Great.
Yeah.
If not, I'm still a writer, I'm still an author, and I still make money at it.
Exactly. I heard that somebody told me once that luck was the intersection of perseverance and opportunity. Mm-hmm. And that is my idea of luck. So you keep going, you know, like I said, I've been writing since 2000, publishing since 2005. And my book that just came out in July with Kensington, is popping all over the place. And it's really funny because for 16 years I've published, I have readers. I don't have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of readers, but I definitely have readers. And this one is like all over the place with people who are like, I'm seeing this everywhere. I've got to go read it. And I'm like, wow, okay, that's never happened in
Yeah.
16 years. Bring it
Yeah.
on. I want all of it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like because I continued to write, I have 50 books out, and I continued to write, and I continued to show up, and I continued to, look at what I want to do. Like you said, have that conversation. Why am I pushing so hard? Why am I making sure that I am paying attention to what's out there, and then aligning that to what I do.
Right.
I then was ready when my perseverance intersected with the opportunity.
That's great.
Yeah.
And congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome. I have, and I look forward to it because I feel confident that someday I will. So
Yeah,
it's like you said, you just keep at it, keep learning, and keep trying, and
yeah,
and honestly trying.
Yeah.
Honestly trying, and by that I mean, if I'm going to self-publish, I'm going to pay an editor a lot of money because that's what they're worth to tell me what's wrong. Because I don't want an editor who's going to be like, oh my God, this is so great. I'm like, yeah, I know, I wrote it. Now tell me what's wrong with it.
It can't be perfect. It
No.
can't. That's I have Nan Swanson is my editor at the Wild Press, and I had told her one time, like, one of these days I'm going to send you a manuscript that's perfect. Then she was like, please don't ever do that, because then I don't have a job. And I was like, oh, okay. No, I didn't think about it that way. And she's like, my job is to make your book better. It's already good.
Right.
But I'm supposed to make it better. And I have Essie Soga at Kensington, which is a completely different editorial experience, but her focus is the exact same thing. The editor, whether you pay them or they're part of a publishing house or however it works, their job is to take what you have and make it into something that is A, more marketable, B, very understood as a reader, and C, pleasurable, whether that's a thriller or a cozy mystery or a chick lit. They know enough to say, this needs more, this needs less. Please make sure you put commas in. I'm not always good at the commas.
yeah. No, I hear you. And I'm the one who's actually. This will be my second book with Wild Rose, because I co-wrote a book with Desiree Holt, and that's what got me into this. And then I started working with Diana, and I really enjoy working with her. So she encouraged me to go ahead and send her stuff. So what else you got, right? So I'm like, okay, here, but she's like, because I'm the one who will look at. So I made her go back from galleys. I'm like, look, this is not right. There's too much here. I can't. We need to take it out of galley, and I want to go back a step. I don't care. I'm not in a rush. I don't care. To me, you don't put a book out there just to have the book out there unless it's not the very best you can do.
Yes.
So we went back a step. I'm like, I got to fix some stuff that's going to be a lot more fit. And she was like, okay,
Is that because you had learned something in your pursuit of other books?
Yeah, seeing stuff that I didn't like. And again, this was a book that sat around for a while.
Oh, okay.
And it stuff about it wasn't working for me.
Right.
And she's like, no, this is really clean. And it was clean. It was a clean manuscript. But I'm like, this is not, no. So,
right.
And she's like, wow, you're like the opposite of a lot of writers I work with, because most people are like, hurry, put it out. I'm like, no, I'm not in a rush.
No, and I totally understand. I would rather have it be good than out. Yeah. Because you build your reputation with every book that you put out. So if you have 6 books that you really liked and that you feel are very good, and then the 7th one is, it's all right, we're just going to get it out because I want to make sure I don't miss a deadline or something, or I don't want to lose readers because I haven't had a book out in 6 months. You're not doing yourself a favor by putting something out that's less than other things that you already have out, because there's an expectation that you're not going to meet. And not only will you necessarily get new readers, but you also may not keep all of your older ones.
Very true.
And that's a bad place to put yourself. You do not want to go there. So when you're going into the thriller, do you feel like you'll still be doing the contemporary romances, or are you kind
absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That is like my happy place.
Okay.
Like I feel like I could, and I write, I'm a marathoner.
Okay.
I don't write every day.
Mm.
I can't.
Got
I'm
it.
too busy. I've got a day job. I've got stuff, or many times I just can't because I don't want to. And I don't want to put that pressure on myself because I feel like that's false pressure, you know? And I want it to feel more natural. But when I do sit down to write something, so this year I took a break from writing and promoting myself for a while because life happened to me and it was no good. And I was like, what? I can't do this anymore. So I stopped.
Yeah.
It helped me in some ways, a lot of ways. I think it refreshed me. I came back to it kind of full force last year.
Excellent.
And which is an odd time to do it, but it helped me get through a lot of kind of, I guess, mental sort of angst over all of the being inside and all the stuff. So I wrote between June of 2019, so in the last calendar year, from June 2020 to now, I guess I've written 5 books.
Nice.
But what I do, and I don't recommend it this way, I always say to people, I don't recommend doing it today.
All right.
Because I get so consumed by it. It's all I can think about. And I stay up too late, or I have unhealthy habits, and I'll sit here, the joke, and it's a truism. I'll be writing, and I'll look over, and I'm like, wow, there's an empty bag of potato chips. Where did they go? I'm like, oh, they were. I don't even remember eating them. I am this way. And it's not really the healthiest way to do it, honestly.
Yeah, I understand.
But it's my way. And so what I did was, I'm going to go back to the sequel to What Happens in Denver is coming out next. And it's all done and ready to go. And it's a great book. And it's already getting some fun, reviews and whatnot.
Good.
And I'm hoping to reach a kind of a wider audience with it if I can.
Yeah.
A lot of that is on us as the authors, because publishers, they do what they can, but they don't do a ton.
Right.
And so I'm working on that. I know a lot of beer people, and this is a beer theme, so I'm reaching out.
I saw that.
Yeah, that's So I'm working on that, and so, but the sequel, which I quickly, I chopped off the last half of it, and last week I wrote probably 50,000 words.
Nice.
To finish that the way it needed to be, so it would fit with the, the storylines would mesh. Because we got about halfway through that one, and Diana was like, oh, no, this works. And then she called me. She goes, oh, okay, I got to that point where you told me you're not going to get to, and it don't work anymore. I'm like, I know, I told you. So I did all that, and that was great. And then, but, oh my God, so I did that last week, and then I got to go visit my daughter in Canada. She lives in Toronto.
Oh, very cool.
I haven't seen her in almost 2 years because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And as soon as they opened that border, I was like, ooh, Delta variant, I'm going to go do that now before they close it again. So I did. And it was, and sometimes I'll sit around and be like, ooh, I should be writing. And right now I'm just like, I can't even, that makes me physically ill to think about sitting down and writing. Because that's how I do it. That's my method. It is not the best method, but it is the only way I know.
That, a part of this podcast too, that I think I've addressed with almost every single person, is one of the things I want people who are listening to get is that there are as many ways to do this as there are people who are doing it.
Oh, yeah.
I have, some days where I write every single day. And it's, I have a regimented, this is how many words you need to get because this is your deadline and you need to get it done. And then I have other times where I go for a week, there's no writing. And then all of a sudden I'll blast through 8,000 words in a day because, whatever works for you. I don't think there is no right way to do this. There's whatever way works, I
think when you're getting started and you're doing a lot of, if I just had the time to sit down and write it. I do say this a lot. I'm like, well, you're going to have to make some time. You're just going to have to start it out. And then once you do that, you will discover your method. And it will, you can try different. I tried.
Absolutely.
I tried 5,000 words a day, and I could do that without a whole lot of effort.
Yes.
But I just can't creatively, my mind, my muse or whatever is happening.
I can't keep up with that.
new, you know?
That's the problem, I think, sometimes, is that, yeah, I totally could write 5,000 words a day. I've done it before. I've written 8,000 words, like I just said. I think my topper was 13,000 words in a day on a retreat. I was exhausted the next day. My brain was like, yeah, you can have
Oh,
tea
God.
and let's go watch some television.
Yeah.
That was about it. Yeah, I
Take
tend
a
to
nap.
get that big push for me usually comes at the very end,
Mm.
because I write a lot of mysteries, whether they're paranormal, contemporary, cozy, whatever. I write a lot of mysteries. So sometimes I take longer in the beginning because I'm making sure the red herrings are there and the clues are there and all that kind of stuff. And then when I get to like those last 3 chapters, everything is closing up, all the threads are being tied, and so I tend to like run through that end part. So I will like make sure that that's going to happen around a weekend because I also have a full-time job, and I'm like, I don't want to be sitting up till
Right.
3 o'clock in the morning and then have to get up at 5 to work. So you can space it out a
Right.
little bit.
Right.
On Saturday, go full bore.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've done it. We've all done that, right? I spent, there'll be weekend, like this weekend, I've got to finish a galley. You know,
Okay.
I've got I wrote another rom-com that Wild Rose took. And it's
Awesome.
about, I'm from Louisville, Kentucky originally. And I've been to the Kentucky Derby many, many, many times.
Yes.
Been to the infield, been to the grandstand, been in a box, been fancy, been in the mud, all of it. So I wrote a rom-com kind of around that. So
Awesome.
I've got galleys that I need to do. And what my method for galleys is out loud. I read it out loud.
Okay.
Because I find more of my own errors when I'm having to read it word, you know, and hear it. So, and that takes a minute.
Yeah,
so that's
absolutely.
That's my weekend.
Right. But that's important. Well, I think that's a great topic too, is, a lot of people, by the time they get to the galleys, they're like, I've read this 75 times, it's all there. And I'm like, no, don't ever do that. Because I had a Kensington book come to me once. I don't know what they did in the formatting, but it was in first person. And every single time I had written, I ran, they smushed it. And it was the country. And I was like, oh, no, we can't, that cannot stay, And so Kensington actually sends you, or has sent me throughout the years, physical pages. So I get like this big envelope in the mail, and it comes out and it's all formatted. And I do like the Wild, because they send it to you electronically, and you could print it out if you wanted to, but you don't have to. But it is kind of nice on the pages. And I don't read it out loud necessarily, but I am very deliberate to read every single word.
Yes, and I find myself, if I don't read it out loud, I cheat. And
I
skip, I skip.
Again.
Yeah, that's fine. Go on to the next thing.
Again, you have to know what your methods are. Yeah. There are some people, I've heard of some people who actually do their galleys backwards. Oh, yeah. So they start on the last page and they read the whole thing backwards. And I'm like,
so you're not getting the story mixed up. Yeah, that's good.
But that to me, like, it's not going to flow. So I don't know that my brain would be able to come up with anything. Yes, every single word would be spelled correctly, I'm sure, but does the sentence make sense? I think would be where I would kind of fall down on that. And again, then as you are going along, and as you rack up more books that you've written, that you've published, that are out, you start learning, like you said, your process. And so what made you want to do a thriller then, since you normally do like contemporary romance?
I read everything.
Right.
Everything. So I'm always, I'm reading, I went on a kick with some, and I hate this phrase, it's a dumb phrase, but domestic thrillers. Like,
I understand.
Girl on a Train and Gone Girl. Love those. That's my jam. I adore an unreliable narrator.
I was just going to ask if that was the part that you liked.
Because I think it's so hard to get right.
Oh, yeah.
I admire the heck out of anyone. So guess what I'm doing? I'm doing that.
I love it.
And my manuscript developer person is like, are you sure? It's hard. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. And I've been through this whole, like, I have the outline of the story, but I said, there's something that's just not clicking, that it's like, who cares? It's like, ugh. I'm like, oh, wait. What about in chapter 1, if this woman that we're calling our protagonist,
yes,
be like almost an amateur sleuth, almost a cozy, but
okay.
it's I mean, it's anyway, there's like a sex club that they're using. I mean, it's all
right,
kind of dark, let's say,
okay.
very dark. And bad people, you know, being bad to each other. Like, it's hard to know who's the worst person in a way.
Okay.
Kind of. So I'm like, oh, but what about if she already knows? And I'm like, well, that's an unreliable narrator right there. That is the definition of an. So I'm going for it, and it's been it freed, man. That first chapter just flew right out. I'm like, oh, now I get it.
Awesome.
Right. So yeah, so making me outline. That was hard. I didn't like it. I didn't want to do that. I bucked again. I resisted it. I put it off. I procrastinated. Like, do whatever. I'm not outlining time schedule. It's your book, not mine. You know,
can't tell me what to do. It's my money.
Like, sure. He goes, absolutely sure. And we've done it. We've done outlines 3 ways. Like, he had me do the traditional, like, act 1, 3 things that happen. Act 2, 3 things that happen. Act 3, 3 things that happen, and the end. And I'm like, but I don't know yet.
Yeah.
Like, no. So his nickname for me is Chaotic Pantser. Chaotic Pantser.
Right.
You know,
that's all right. That's all right.
You know, and you just can't. You can do that in a book that is character driven, like a romance.
Yeah.
And that's how I do it. Sometimes I have to stop and be like, wait, what happens next? And I'll do that, kind of jot it down.
Absolutely.
But that's it.
Yeah. No,
so I did that outline, and then he's like, and then I'm like, I can't keep calling these people by protagonist, victim, villain, fake villain. Like, fine, give them names. I'm like, so I gave them names, and then I'm like, well, now I have to rewrite the outline, because the outline has got to be about them as people. And so I wrote this whole thing, and he goes, all right, that's cool, but in thrillers, you don't need an entire backstory for a person.
Okay.
That actually is giving away too much to the reader if you build this giant backstory like you do for romance characters. He goes, right. It's just it's an expectation of the genre, and the reader is different. And I'm like, why did you let me write that whole thing over? He goes, because you had to do it to understand that that's in your head. You can have all of that. Right. So now my final outline is in 2 colors of ink. Right. Okay. Black and red. Black is what happens. Red is what I know is actually happening, and is not. On the page.
Interesting. So and do you find that works really well for you?
Great. It's working great. I'm in early stages. Like I said, I've written chapter 1, which came out,
and the last
3 versions of the last chapter, because I know what happens, and I just am struggling with, in keeping with, again, to me, that's the struggle between going from chapter 1 to the end and not having everything in the middle. But he's like, no, this is an exercise that I'm having you do on purpose.
So do you think that you'll try to get an agent with this, or you?
Okay. Am I, and he's like, let's not, he goes, also don't talk about that. And this guy is like the real deal.
Oh, awesome. Super connected. I will be very interested. You'll have to come back on when you're done, when you're allowed to talk about it, and we'll have to revisit how it all went.
I know, I'm excited about it, actually. Good. And so, but because I did all that work on that sequel where it had, it was smoking hot off the pages. Yeah. Which is something I hadn't written for a while. And so I needed a break from writing. I'm like, I got to stop for like 5 days, Yeah.
So. Yeah. No, totally understandable. That's one of the reasons. So when I was writing romance, some of it was on the page. I didn't necessarily close the door, but I wasn't as graphic as I could have been. And when I first started long ago, I did write 4 erotic romances. Yeah. And I was like, I can do this. I don't want to do it, because if you need an instruction manual, don't come to me. And I loved reading them. Yeah. And I have a couple of friends. I have a friend who made the New York Times and USA Today bestseller with erotic romance. So I do enjoy them. I just am not the best at writing them. And so the more that I got into writing, the more I'm like, I just really love killing people on the page. And that's what it comes down to. I enjoy
Yeah.
the sleuthing part,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
opposed to the fear part that
Right.
I think you
Right.
would get into
Right.
in a thriller. And
Right.
so like that's my thing now. And so sometimes there's more romance, sometimes there's not, sometimes it's chiclety, sometimes it's more traditional. And so like my question with your core audience is, I generally tend to be able to move people around with me. The only thing that I have a hard time with is some people refuse to read paranormal, which is fine, and I completely understand that. But yeah, I'll be very interested also to see if your fans are like, this is really cool, and because it's you, I'll come with you.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean,
Who
we'll
knows?
see. I wrote a book. I finished a super popular series of mine, and the very first series that ever found me fans.
Okay.
I finished it up this year, and I wrote the book, I feel like, for those core fans.
Yes.
Because they had stopped. This is a series that is, I like kind of sweeping sagas, like generations of blah blah blah. So I had hit generation 2 and kind of stopped.
Okay.
And so I wrote them a book, and it's very gratifying for all of us,
Good.
So that kind of broke me back into, I think, my writing head, if you will, sort of put me back in that space where I'm like, yeah, I can do this. I mean, we all have imposter syndrome 2 or 3 times a day, but I mean, I went through a phase where I was like 3 years worth of it. I'm like, nope, I'm fake. This is not real. I can't do it.
Why are you reading my book? Stop reading my book. You shouldn't be reading my book. It's not good.
I'm not famous.
Sometimes we're so stupid. I have this thing. I mean, like I said, we've been publishing for 16 years. Sometimes I'm like, where did you even find my book? Why are you reading it? And I'm like, oh my gosh, knock it off. You're embarrassing the person who's like, I love your book. And you're like, why?
Right.
That's stupid.
Yeah.
It's not a good question. I don't recommend using it. Go ahead and come up with something else.
Yeah.
How funny. Well, we are almost at 40 minutes. I knew this was going to go fast.
It's been fun.
This is an awesome conversation. I'd love to have you back on. Either when that happens or just in general, whenever you'd like to come back on.
And chat about anything.
That would be awesome. So I want to make sure that we let people know where can we find you online, and then what's next.
My website kind of has everything. It's kind of a good base to start, and it's easy. LizCrowe.com. I just had it redone this year. I love it.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a good site. And book is the one I've been talking about. That's what's next. And it's What Happens in Denver. And it's super cute. Yep. And it is craft beer based, which is my life. I owned a brewery and ran a bar and all these things. So I'm steeped in it. I know how to brew beer. I know all the things. So it's legit. And which is important to me. And it releases September 20th.
Awesome.
And so, I'm doing all the kind of pre-talking about it and whatnot. I have a book coming out right after that. That's in a series that has been a little bit stealthily popular. One of those. It's like, are you reading this? Oh yeah, it's pretty good, isn't it? The series is called The Detroit Sports Network, and it's with Evernight Publishing. Okay. And it is, I started it with a book called Lady Balls.
I loved that. When I saw it on your website,
that book has won some awards, which is cool.
Now that intrigues me.
And it's one of those things where it's like, I just don't have a ton of time/money to promote the way I could be doing, but whatever.
I understand.
So it is about a fictional women-run sports network set in Detroit, and which is where I live, near where I lived for a long time. And so I love sports. I love I raised an athlete. My daughter played D1 soccer for Michigan State.
Awesome.
So, and I love soccer particularly. So I started with a female soccer person. And the struggle, of being a woman and how, even now, right, we're still talking about how it's fair. They win all the games. They don't make enough money.
Right.
But, so I came up with a station that is basically run by women in front and behind the camera. It was founded actually by a male football player guy who But he's like, of all the sports people that I've had to deal with in my life, I preferred talking to women because they were honestly concerned about you as a human being.
Yes.
You know, so he's like, I've got money, I'm gonna retire, let's do a thing. So he does the thing, and I made it into like the dream place to work. So, and it's gotten a ton of great reviews, like recently.
That's awesome.
And so I've got another book coming out for it in October as well. It's called GOAT, Greatest of All Time.
Yeah.
So it's another kind of story within that world, and it's a world more than a series, so you don't have to read them in any order or anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, and I know I recommend anybody who's listening go over and look through the different books, because there are a lot of different series I think that you would really enjoy getting your teeth into.
And all my and I'm on all the socials. You know, I'm Liz Crowe author on everything pretty much.
Okay.
Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and I kind of poke around in TikTok every now and then, but I almost feel if I started doing a ton of it and then I got mad because I felt like I was getting too stressed out because I wasn't doing enough TikToks. I'm like,
what the hell?
No.
Yeah.
No.
I understand. It gets rough sometimes because you do, and it's like, okay, seriously, is that what I'm concerned about? Because I ought to be writing books. Because if I'm not writing books, then there's no point in having a TikTok. Exactly. So yeah. So I got you.
I'm there, and I love TikTok, but it's also a giant rabbit hole you fall down.
Yeah, like 72 videos later, you're like, oh
my God,
there's that bag of chips again. There's that bag of chips again. When did I eat that?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's wonderful. We will definitely be looking for you. And for the people who are listening, put the same offer out that I've done before. If you have any questions that you think Liz or I could answer for you, let us know down in the comments. I will absolutely get them over to Liz. She can't help you learn something that you're looking for that she does. And thank you again. This was a blast. I am so happy that you were available.
Yeah, this was a great Friday. TGIF.
Yes, absolutely. All right, everybody, have a wonderful, wonderful evening, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.